up, YouTube? Three Sons RC coming at you again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about droop screws, how to set your droop, and better aftermarket droop screws that won't tear up your chassis when they hit your body. Now, just to kind of talk about what droop screws are real quick in the beginning, just so we're all on the same page, is droop screws basically stop your A-arms from going down too far, and they set how the level of your chassis in relation and sets your how far your suspension can travel. Now, if you have too much droop, what'll happen is your shock rod end will completely extend itself out, and then you're in the air, you land, you crash, and you potentially break these shock rod ends and cause other types of destruction down there. If you're breaking shock rod ends constantly, it's probably because your droop's not set, you're using your RC out of the box, and you haven't adjusted that. Now, basically, there's droop screws on just about every RC that I can think of, every hobby grade one. And on the Arrma Kraton and most Arrma vehicles, you can see them right here. It's a little dark, I apologize for that, but you can kind of see that there's a screw right there, and that sets it. Now, this comes with stock Arrma droop screws, right? These droop screws are pointy on both ends. They're not ideal. You can get some focus on here. Apologize for that. Basically, they're pointy on both ends, and you can. I'll show you how to adjust them in a second, but they're pointy on both ends, and what they do is they jab down into the chassis, because your A-arm will rest on this part of the chassis underneath here, and that's what you adjust up and down to set the travel, right? To stop your droop from being too low. Now, these right here, these will dig in your chassis, tear it all up. And this is a stock chassis, not M2C chassis or anything like that. But, you know, you don't want to dig it in there crazy, because then not only does it tear up your chassis, but it actually adjusts itself, and your droop will actually be off because it'll start digging a hole in your chassis, and then the droop that you actually took the time to set will be off now because there's a big hole in your chassis, because these things are too stinking pointy, right? So if you go ahead and order this part, your local hobby shop might have it. It's AR727410. These guys will fix that issue. Now, M2C sells even better ones. They're probably hardened a lot better, but they're like 15, 16 bucks. I may get those someday, but these are cheap Arrma ones that your local shop will have. They have the button heads, and that's going to stop it from digging into your chassis, or at least make it happen less, right? Now, they have a hex on this side to screw it in the bottom, and they also have a hex on the underside, so you can adjust it. And they're going to basically go underneath your A-arm, and your chassis is going to be down here, and it's going to stop it from hitting your chassis. It's going to hit your chassis, but it's going to be a button head instead of that pointy screw, and stop tearing up your stuff. So I'm going to kind of pause for a second and show you what I mean by that. So you see this part of the chassis that kind of sticks out right down below, kind of right below the RPM skid plate there. That's where your droop screw is going to set. And I don't know if I can get a good angle here, but right above that, I apologize for the light, is where that is going to sit. It's going to sit right there, and that's where your droop is going to be stopped by the droop screw. It sets on that little dog ear. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about. So again, setting your droop is just to make it so that way your suspension travels the correct amount and doesn't overextend itself. So that way your suspension arm is not completely overextended, and your shock arm is not completely overextended upon impact. Because if it is, you'll break this guy if you hit it enough times, or the wrong way, or land directly on one of the arms. So ideally what you want to do is you want to make it so that essentially the shock is having to be a little bit depressed and then screwed in. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to show you. You're going to undo this screw right here, loosen that up, pop this guy out, and make it so that your suspension, your rear suspension, can travel a little bit. And then you're going to adjust the droop screw up and down, so that way, in order to put this, slide this this piece right here through the bottom of the shock rod, you'll have to actually push up on the shock and just depress it just the tiniest bit, because you still want all your travel, you just want a tiny bit of dampening in the bottom. So let me take that apart so I can show you. Now I've removed the pin, and actually I can slide it in perfectly. I can slide it in perfectly. The shock is totally extended, and I can slide it in. Everything's extended. I've adjusted the droop so that way it's perfectly level. But this is really not where you want it. You want it so that in order to slide the pin through, you actually have to depress this shock just a little bit. So let me do that for you real quick. Sorry, no head mic right now, or head camera right now. So now I've adjusted the droop screw in the back just enough to lift this A arm up enough so that way when you look at this arm, I can't quite get it in there. I'd have to push it up just a little bit to line it up. See how there's a little bit of depression right there? That's pretty much how you want it. You want as much as travel. Right there is perfect. See, it's just about like 1/8 of an inch of a slide. So that's pretty much setting your droop. Drop that puppy back in there. You'll be ready to go. That will give you longer life on these shock rod ends. Now you could get Arrma Nero shock rod ends. RPM makes them for the Traxxas that you can pop in here. That'll strengthen it up too. So those are useful pieces. But I'd rather just save the stock ones, and when I eventually break them, if that's the case, even with proper droop, then maybe I'll upgrade. But stock is strong, Arrma strong. So hopefully this video finds you well. It explains droop. Has an option for these better droop screws right from Arrma, half the price of some of the aftermarket ones. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Really appreciate it. That helps support the channel. Also, hopefully this is hopefully this is helpful for you guys. You guys have a great day, and thanks for watching the whole video. This is Dennis over at Three Sons RC. Peace out. What's up, YouTube? Three Sons RC.